Hey everyone, welcome back to a brand new LBA Talks. This is episode 2, and in this episode, we will be reminiscing about classic survival horror games. So, we'll be talking about things like Resident Evil, Silent Hill, Alone in the Dark, and there's probably a few more titles that you guys will probably remind me of. Hey Zeno, welcome to the stream. Hope you're doing well. Today is going to be a very, let's say, horror Halloween special episode. So after we talk about the survival horror games, I'll show you guys and tell you guys about the progress I've been making on my very own classic survival horror game subject. Then we'll move on. We'll talk about horror games that have came out in 2023 and all of the upcoming games coming out next year. Then we'll chat about what's next for Resident Evil and Silent Hill. So we've got a new Resident Evil Capcom engine coming out, and also we're still waiting on a few Silent Hill titles, as well as the Silent Hill 2 remake. Then a possible move to Unity, Unreal, or G Develop. So I'm not going to be developing in Dreams forever. I think that's obvious. You know, the servers could close any time, so I'm always looking one step ahead to see what kind of games I can make in the future. So I'll talk a little bit about that and each sort of game dev tools that I can use. And last but not least, I was going to talk about a new horror game announcement. So it's a video I'm going to make, probably going to release it tomorrow, but it's going to be more of a challenge type of video, a challenge type of game. Like, I'm going to try and make a game within a year, so I'm going to talk more about that probably near the end of the stream. So I think what I'll do for this week's episode is rather than just have a static screen the entire time, I'm going to try and put some gameplay on in the background. Hey Spectron, hey, long time no see. So if anyone remembers, this was Nightmare Grand back in the day before the name change occurred. I'm not sure if I asked you what inspired you to update your name. Nightmare Grand, I always liked that name, but I'm curious what's the significance for Spectron. So I'm just going to quickly update a few of the details for the stream here. Just put a thumbnail on, and we'll get started on the topics really. So maybe I'll stick this one on, see what this is all about. The backrooms. Everybody loves the backrooms. I do not know that much about the backrooms, to be honest, but I'm sure you guys know a lot about it. Hey Spikefolk, nice to see you again. Welcome to the stream. Yeah, so it's going to be a very horror inspired stream today. I'm just going to quickly update some of the details here on the page. These are not my social medias, by the way. I just didn't press X to go to the next screen. It's a good way to promote your channel, isn't it? If you make a game in Dreams, just show your socials and everything. There's various reasons, might explain later. Yeah, no worries. So I'm just going to put the thumbnail here. There's someone drilling next door, by the way, so if there's any if you hear any drill sounds, I mean, it's quite appropriate. It's quite horrifying having someone drill through your wall, but it's not me. But I tried to turn the gain down on my microphone just in case, because it's pretty annoying. It's new neighbours, so they're they're putting up furniture and things like that. Okay, right, so there we go. Thumbnail sorted. So yeah, so the first topic is basically going to try and reminisce about classic survival horror games. So everyone knows I love Oh, I think I closed the elevator. I don't know if I was supposed to do that. But everyone knows I love the quitter ending. You have abandoned the back rooms. I guess that's what any sane person would do, right? But hopefully it reloads again, so I don't need to do that. So yeah, let's reminisce about classic survival horror games. So I'm a big fan of survival horror games. I've played not every survival horror game, but to be honest, if you really look at a list of survival horror games, there's actually not that many, to be honest. It's a very, I wouldn't say it's a niche, but it's definitely got its smaller tastes, I guess. Obviously, Resident Evil is going to be one of the bigger titles that we're probably going to talk about, alongside Silent Hill. And if anyone played Alone in the Dark back in the day, it's probably the oldest survival horror game in history. Do you want a tutorial? No, thank you. So yeah, Alone in the Dark, it kind of started off as like this really old PC kind of game, didn't it? And it was more like a point and click adventure. I didn't really play those games. I didn't really get into survival horror until the first Resident Evil. Hey Schemecos, welcome to the stream. Hey everybody. Yeah, it's nice to see you again. Yeah, we're doing a new format of live streams. I started one last week where we just kind of talk about certain topics and reminisce about games from the past. So if you've got anything to contribute, by all means, leave a comment, we'll discuss. Get some of these batteries here. So yeah, talking about Resident Evil, I don't know what are some of your earliest memories of survival horror games or of Resident Evil, if you ever played any of those games. Yeah, the original Alone in the Dark looks rough by today's standards. Yeah, it's I think you can get, I don't know if it's the first game or the second game on the PS1, but it doesn't look like a PS1 game. It looks like an Atari game or something. Like it's that kind of pixelated 2D graphic adventure. But there is one Alone in the Dark game which I really enjoyed. It's probably the only one. It's called The New Nightmare. So that came out on the PS1, PS2. I think it even came out on the Game Boy Color, but I don't think I would recommend that version. But that game was basically just, I don't know if you could say a rip-off of Resident Evil, because it's like Alone in the Dark created survival horror technically, and then you had other games that Resident Evil was inspired by, like Sweet Home, which I've never played, but I think it was the same idea. You were sort of trapped in this house and you had to solve puzzles to escape, and that's how Resident Evil first got started, really. And it's funny, once you get to Alone in the Dark, The New Nightmare, the tables turned, and that was the game that was inspired by Resident Evil. So it's basically the exact same. Because in that game, it's got two characters that you can play as. What I liked about that Alone in the Dark game is that each character starts off in a different location. So the guy, I think the plane they're in a storm, and the plane goes and crashes, and they have to parachute out, so they get split up. And then the guy, he basically lands on the ground, and the girl, she lands on the roof. So I really liked that aspect of it. I thought that was really cool, because in Resident Evil, when you choose your character in 1 or 2, it's always the same starting location, basically. Whereas in Alone in the Dark, The New Nightmare, it was like you actually felt like each campaign was a bit more unique, I would say. Right, I'll just bring the chat up here. That's the one I played. Massive step forward in terms of how it looks and plays. Pretty sure I only played it on a demo disc though. Ah, okay. Yeah, it was actually from my uncle. He had the game, and he even had one of those PlayStation magazines that actually like told you like where to go, what to do, how to find ammo, and this and that. And since I loved Resident Evil, I was like, I've never heard of this game, Alone in the Dark. What the hell is that? So I ended up just borrowing it from him, and then he ended up just giving it to me. So I played the PS1 version of Alone in the Dark, but there is a PS2 version which does look a lot better. Obviously, the character models and everything look really good. But there's something about PS1 aesthetics, like how they look so old and kind of ugly. It's kind of horrifying at the same time. So I feel like even though the PS2 version looks better, I would still recommend playing the PS1 game just because that's like the classic style, you know, of Resident Evil in the original Silent Hill. I think like that PS1 aesthetic, it really adds to the appeal. Skincost says, I played just the demo of Resident Evil 2 on my mate's PlayStation. The first Resident Evil game I owned and finished was Resident Evil Code Veronica, then the Resident Evil remake on GameCube. Yeah, they were great games. It's funny, Code Veronica, it's one of those games where I'm a Resident Evil fan, so I like them all, but there's something about Code Veronica that I don't know, I just couldn't get into like the other games. I don't know what it was. Like, I don't know if it was the style of the graphics, like the zombies were all kind of muddy and kind of stupid. I'm going to jump down this hole, by the way. Oh. And I don't know, I couldn't really get into the game. I felt like it was kind of weird. But I have a friend who, he loves Code Veronica. He thinks it's the best Resident Evil game of all time. But for me, it's good, but I don't know, I can't quite put my finger on it. I need to have a good think why it kind of put me off. But then you said you played the remake on the GameCube. Yep, fantastic. Resident Evil 0 was also on the GameCube. What I really liked about the Resident Evil remake was that they didn't just update the graphics, they also changed like the layout of the mansion. They added a lot of new corridors and rooms and solutions to puzzles, and it's probably one of the best remakes ever made, to be honest. Like, I really enjoyed the Resident Evil 2 remake. Like, that's one of my best games of all time, because it's like, it's Resident Evil 2, the gameplay is really fun, and it's a game that I've completed like at least 4 times now, and honestly I would go back and play again and again. It's just, gameplay wise, it just feels so good. But yeah, Resident Evil 1 remake was fantastic. Actually, I didn't have a GameCube. I got a Wii, a Nintendo Wii. It was the first Nintendo home console I ever owned. Never owned a NES or a SNES or anything. It was the Wii. That was the first one I got. And most people will probably think, oh, it's the Wii, you know, the fad. Everyone wanted to play Wii Sports and in these gimmicky kind of games. But to be honest, I mostly got it for the Umbrella Chronicles and eventually the Dark Side Chronicles. It's kind of like a time crisis version of Resident Evil. You get to go through all the different games, like a light gun experience, but very slow paced. It's not like Time Crisis where it's like duck and run around. It's like you take your time and explore the various settings. But that's what I mostly got it for. And then since the Wii was backwards compatible, I also got some GameCube games. So I got Resident Evil 1 remake, I got Resident Evil 0, I also got Luigi's Mansion, because that was kind of like a Nintendo version of Resident Evil, going through the mansion, fighting off ghosts, collecting keys and solving minor puzzles. Skimcost also says, then Silent Hill 2, which was awesome too. Oh yeah, fantastic game. It's actually the first Silent Hill game I actually completed. Like, I played the first game before, but that was also a game that belonged to my uncle, and I only played a little bit of it, but I used to think it was really difficult compared to Resident Evil. You know, it's like there was like fog everywhere. Oh, here comes the drill. Don't know if you guys can hear that. They pick the worst timing to drill through walls, don't they? Just like this guy drill his painting, his masterpiece on the wall before we keep going. Yeah, so Silent Hill 1, I found it a lot more difficult to play because it was like there was a fog everywhere, it was hard to see. There was also the melee combat, which was more difficult. And whenever you used a gun in Silent Hill, oh my god, this guy just cannot stop drilling. And then whenever you used a gun in Silent Hill, it was like kind of awkward because the character didn't really know how to fire a gun. It wasn't like Resident Evil where everyone was basically a trained combat expert, you know. Spectron says, unfortunately, I don't have much experience with survival horror, but I already mentioned I'd catch up in the future. Yeah, I was talking to Spectron off stream, and we were basically talking about how he hasn't played a lot of games from the classic eras, you know, the beginning of some of these franchises like Final Fantasy and survival horror games like Silent Hill. Oh my god, there's something. There's something chasing me here. It's still coming. And yeah, so he said that he was playing Silent Hill 2 recently. He just completed it. It's a fantastic game, fantastic story. And with the remake coming out, I think it's going to bring a lot of new players to Silent Hill. I hope they don't mess it up. Blooper Team, or Bloober, or whatever they're called. They've made some interesting games, but I'm not really a fan of walking simulators, even if it's a horror game. So most of their games I've not really played. I didn't even play the Blair Witch game. The only one I've properly played was the Medium. I completed the Medium, and even though it's still technically a walking simulator, I thought it was like the perfect Silent Hill game. It was like you could basically do everything you'd think of. You know, you transport between two separate worlds. You have like this gloomy environments. You know, it's like classic survival horror with the camera angles, but the only thing the Medium lacked was combat, and I think if they basically replicate that in Silent Hill 2 and just add some combat, some enemies, then it'll be perfect. Because the Medium was so close. Like, it was a great game, but if it had some decent combat, some enemies, and they fleshed out a few things here and there, that could have easily have been a Silent Hill game. Just take the Medium away and call it Silent Hill. It would have been like, it could have been called Silent Hill the Medium, and I would have believed it, to be honest. So Echo says, I wonder how a kid playing the original Resident Evil would react to it now. It was horrifying back then. Needed my sister there to play it with me. Yeah, yeah, the original Resident Evil. It's quite funny. Like, if kids did play it today, they'd probably just complain about the graphics, and it's hard to say how serious they would take it. But when I first played Resident Evil 1, it was absolutely horrifying because I'd never played a survival horror game before, or a horror game. You know, I was just playing things like Crash Bandicoot and Spyro and Final Fantasy, and then suddenly I've got this extremely creepy game to play. And I think the first thing that really caught me off guard was the music, because the music is so haunting, so horrifying. And I remember I went up the stairs in the mansion and went to like the second floor corridor, and just that music, and then you can hear the zombies like groaning and shuffling their feet on the carpet, and it was like, because of the camera angles, you couldn't actually see the zombies. So I was always terrified, like, oh my god, like, am I actually going to have to walk forward here and go against this thing? So it was, I played it with my brother as well. It was, I still remember the experience. I don't know if you can have that kind of experience anymore. So Swickful says, I need to get around to Luigi's Mansion, looks great. Yeah, the first game's really good. Probably a bit dated now, but I've completed the second game on the 3DS as well. If you have a 3DS, you can get the first game on that as well. You don't need to get a GameCube. So they're both pretty good. Just like a few control issues here and there, but overall, pretty good games. The second one's a bit different because instead of one mansion, it's like several mansions, and it's like there's like a variety of different styles. But if you prefer that singular kind of mansion, then you're probably going to enjoy the first game. And I think the third game as well on the Switch. I've not got a Switch, but I think the third game is meant to be very similar to the first, where you're focusing on one mansion, backtracking through that. Skinco says, I only played Silent Hill 2 and 4, loved both, especially 2. I hope the remake will be as great as the Resident Evil 2 remake was. Yeah, it's going to be quite tough, I think, to get on that level, because Resident Evil, it's an action game, so it's always going to appeal to more people. Whereas Silent Hill, it's like there's combat, but it's not really the main point, you know? It's like you're supposed to struggle, you're supposed to feel weak, and I just wonder how they're going to replicate that. Like, are they going to basically make James much more combat efficient, or are they going to try and make it a bit more janky, I guess? I'll be curious to see how they handle the combat, because these devs, they've never really made a game like this before, like with combat. They've only really done, like I said, walking simulators. So it's going to be a big test for them, I think. But yeah, you've played 2 and 4, definitely. 1 and 3, also excellent games. If you can go back and stomach the graphics, I'm sure you'll really enjoy them as well. But the first game's so iconic when you think about the soundtrack, that theme song. You know the one I'm talking about, and the whole introduction to the town of Silent Hill. Surprised they didn't remake Silent Hill 1 again, but I guess it's like Resident Evil 2 remake. They thought, well, there's technically already a remake for 1, we'll just continue with 2. Skimcast says, are you talking about the original? Luigi's Mansion was awesome. Yep, indeed, it was brilliant. I have the medium, still haven't started it. Yeah, you should start it. Like, it's a really short game. It's like 4 or 5 hours long, maybe. So it shouldn't take you too long. It's got a great story, great voice acting. It feels just like Silent Hill, like I said, without the combat. So if you like to explore and get a really nice horror story that's not just about scares, it's also about the medium herself, like her story, and how she sort of tied into the whole thing. Right, let me see, flashlight. So I'm supposed to find a crowbar or something. Let's go up here. Spectron says, I don't trust the Silent Hill 2 remake to be very good. Lots of red flags I've already noticed. Lack of subtlety, cinematic over-the-shoulder camera, walking sim vibes, probably going to censor certain themes. Yeah, I feel like we're going to get mostly a walking sim here. Maybe with some, combat here and there, maybe not too much. Because there is a monster in the medium, but you just run away from it, basically. And there's a few moments where you can damage it and try and kill it from time to time. So it does create more different scenarios. But if you're playing a Silent Hill game, you're going to want more combat, I think. I think it's pretty essential. It's like making a Resident Evil game without any combat or any guns or anything. It just wouldn't make sense. This game's cost says, I don't like the character model much, and I miss the lack of emotions in the original, but other than that, I like what I'm seeing. Yeah, I've not really seen too much. I think I've only seen like the opening cutscene when he's in the bathroom. Yeah, his face does look a little bit different, I suppose. Just going to have to wait and see about this gameplay, because I thought the game was going to come out this year for Halloween, but seems like it's not going to come out till next year. But the thing is, it's like, is it getting delayed because it's not good enough and it needs more work, or is it just we're just getting impatient and expecting it to arrive much sooner than it's supposed to? But I'll be optimistic. I think I'm not really going into it thinking like, oh, this game is like a dream come true. I'm just going to wait, see what it's like, and hopefully it's good enough. Skincost says, yeah, good point, LB. It's been a while since I played, so I forgot that James felt weak combat-wise. Yeah, it's like even like Harry from the first game as well. It's the same thing. Whenever you use a gun, like when he aims the gun, it's not like in Resident Evil where they have like a firm grip and they have a really tactical pose and everything's like proper and correct. In that game, it was like Harry would just kind of point the gun, and when he fired it, I think you could actually walk backwards, and you kind of like your arms would move backwards as well as you fired the gun, so you would like lose your posture completely. And you could tell this guy just doesn't know how to use a gun. He's just sort of pointing it in a direction and firing. And I think it was the same. I don't know if this is true, but in Silent Hill 2, people were asking like, as you progress through the game, the more you use the melee combat, does James improve? Does he get better at using it? And some people said yes, it's true, and some people said they weren't sure. But it's a cool mechanic to know, like, you start the game off with like a lead pipe and you're swinging it around like you're just fighting for your life, and then gradually you start to become accustomed to it. I think that if it's true, that would be a really good feature. So hopefully they do that in the remake. They try and create that kind of RPG feeling where you're getting stronger, like your swings are stronger, they're more fluid, you're more confident. But at the same time, people need to realise that if the combat's not so good, does that make it a bad game, when it's on purpose? Screencast also says, I've seen an early work in progress video of some combat where they have a Resident Evil style dodge mechanic. Interesting. Yeah, because the game's going to be third person, isn't it? It's not going to be first person, so you actually get to see your character jumping around, trying to avoid all of the gruesome creatures. Oh my god, what is that? Big monster. I can't wait to see Pyramid Head in the remake. I think could be pretty special. You've seen a smell running at you from the dark. You tried to escape, but you weren't quick enough. Level 1 ending. Yeah, I'm definitely not very good at these kind of games. So I'll jump off and I'll see if I can find something else to play whilst we chat away. But yeah, I seen some footage of Silent Hill 2 remake, the combat. I think they sort of showed like they were doing like motion capture and stuff, so it did look quite quite interesting. But yeah, like I said, I hope they get it right. But yeah, for me, like my time was mostly like with Resident Evil. That's what I grew up with. And like I said, the music, classic, the way you couldn't see the zombies and the monsters and everything off the side of the camera. The characters were fantastic. Like, even though the voice acting was always so poor, I still really appreciated the characters. They're so lovable in their own way, and the fact that I never played a game that had like proper backtracking before, like it's basically like a Metroidvania, where you're finding things, going back to unlock doors or solve puzzles, and that extended to Resident Evil 2 as well. Except this time, instead of being in a mansion, you were basically around the Raccoon City on the streets in the police station. And I think what made the second game better for a lot of people was probably down to the fact that it did feel a bit more real. Because in the first game, you're obviously in a mansion, and it's kind of like a booby-trapped kind of mansion. But the second game, it feels more real, I guess. Like you're just trying to survive out in the streets, going through any buildings you can, the sewers. And again, great characters. What I really liked about the second Resident Evil game was the fact that both characters had two different scenarios. Because I don't think the first Resident Evil had that. I think they just had like some partner scenarios, like people you could save. So Jill could try and save Barry, Chris could try and save Rebecca, and you had different endings depending on if you saved them or not. Whereas in Resident Evil 2, it's basically like they both have their A and B scenarios. So I think the true endings are basically Claire A and Leon B. But I was playing Leon A to start with because he just looked like a really cool character. But it's cool because you can go back through the game again a second time with each character. There's different events that trigger. So for example, if you remember Mr. X from the remake, he actually isn't in Leon's scenario A, which I didn't even remember. I thought I was going to come up against him. The entire game I was like really worried about him. But I think it's scenario B where he comes to life. And I think there's other things that happen with Claire. I can't really remember exactly what it is, but it was really revolutionary at the time to be able to play as two characters. They both have like their own campaign, but you can also play through both campaigns again to see a completely different perspective or list of events. That's one thing the Resident Evil remake, the second remake, didn't really do too well. I feel like they removed a lot of content and the A-B scenario wasn't quite as good. The only thing it really changed was the type of weapons you got, and it sort of skipped the intro a little bit because I think you started in a different location, but I don't think it really changed that much. And of course they also removed a lot of content, a lot of boss battles and things like that, but I still love the Resi 2 remake. I still think it's maybe not as perfect as it could be, but it's still a pretty damn fun game to play, to be honest. Hey Small Who Man, welcome to the stream. So far we've just been reminiscing about classic survival horror games. So we've been talking about Silent Hill, the Silent Hill 2 remake that's going to be coming out soon. Don't know when, but hopefully it's soon. Some people have doubts if it's going to actually turn out to be a good game. We sort of touched on Alone in the Dark, which doesn't actually have that many good games, I would say. And now we're just sort of touching on Resident Evil. Sort of spoke about the first game there and the second game. In Resident Evil 3, you get to play as Jill again from the first game, but the third game was much more action packed. I think it sort of introduced tons of really powerful weapons at the start of the game. Normally in Resident Evil you just get like a pistol, and then you have to go off and upgrade and find your shotgun and your machine gun and your revolver and all these kind of things. Resident Evil 3 was like, no, you're up against it, so here's a machine gun, like a big assault rifle. You can find a shotgun right at the start of the game, don't worry about it. You've got your pistol, but you're probably never going to use it. I think the game also had, like, I think the second game had an easy mode too, but 3 was like encouraging you, like, just play it on easy, just play it like an action game, shoot down all these zombies, and just have fun with it, have some chaos. So there was loads of zombies on the streets. There was also Nemesis, so he also chased you around at certain points in the game. Terrifying creature. I don't think the Resident Evil 3 remake did him justice. I feel like he was a bit tame, but in the original Resident Evil 3 he was a proper menace. Like, he would just show up. You would hear like a door open, and the camera would just focus on him, and it would be like, like, oh my god, this big beast is going to be chasing me all over the place. So that was a great game, but a little bit frustrating at times as well. That's the game that introduced the dodge mechanic, and it's a little bit frustrating because when you face Nemesis, there's some fights you can run away from, some you can't. And if you can't run, you have to dodge, and you have to learn how to use the mechanic, and it's not so easy to dodge. Like, you need to really perfect it. And when it's a tank-like game, the controls are already against you, so it's never quite as easy, to be honest. And then we had the remake, the Resident Evil 1 remake, which again we spoke about. Fantastic remake, did amazing things with the graphics. It also added tons of new areas and scenarios of its own. There was Resident Evil 0 also on the GameCube, and that game was flawed but interesting at the same time, because you had two characters that you could actually simultaneously play as. It was like a single player co-op kind of game. That's something I would like to do if I ever make a sequel to Subject. I would like to make like a game that has that co-op element, but obviously a single player one where you can just switch between the two characters. And the cool thing was that each of the characters, they could be in a different room. They didn't have to be together. So one could be off on another side of the mansion, one could be like underground, and during the story sections they could also come together and help each other to solve little puzzles. And if you left them in another room, sometimes the zombies would respawn and they would start to attack the other player. So they were never safe. If you changed characters, it wasn't like, oh, you're not playing as them anymore, you're safe. You were always in danger. So it was a really cool mechanic, which I'd love to see again. I'd love to see another classic survival horror game, but with a sort of co-op element. I think it would be really good to see. Then we had the Resident Evil 4. We had the action-based Resident Evil games, which completely revolutionised action horror games. I think some people give it hate because it's not like a proper survival horror game. It's kind of doing its own thing, it's like a hybrid kind of thing. But I think if you look at Resident Evil 4 just as a game on its own merits, it's a fantastic game, really fun to play. Still has some things that remind you of the classic games, but still trying to push the franchise forward, doing new things. But then obviously came Resident Evil 5. Again, a lot of people hated that because it was basically Resident Evil 4 but not horror. It was like everything was in the daylight. There was lots of controversy about the game because it was set in Africa. A lot of people didn't like the fact that you were shooting Africans, and that was it. A lot of people said the game was a little bit racist, so they had to update it, change like different enemy models and things. And I think because the gameplay was basically just Resident Evil 4 with better graphics, but again, it wasn't really a horror game, but still really fun. It had that had a proper co-op element. Resident Evil 4 with co-op, and you could help each other take down all the last, no, not last Plagueuses. It was like the Ouroboros or whatever it was called. It was this other parasite that they used, but it's still a fun game. I still like it. Like, I'll still defend Resi 5. One game I won't ever defend is Resi 6 though, because that game is shockingly bad, absolutely terrible. It's a game I really wanted to love, but I don't know. Like, the way the game controls is, I don't like it. It's just too, like, when you shoot the zombies, for example, it just feels like you're shooting against this mush. It doesn't have any impact, and when you're aiming and when you're trying to do all the dodging, I think they went a bit too far. They started to dodge, make the characters dodge like a proper die-hard action game, proper flipping around, falling on their backs, and the story was just all-out action warfare, and they just kind of ruined it. They said the Leon campaign was supposed to be a return to sort of Resident Evil 4, but nah, it just wasn't so interesting. So that's a game that it's just full of content. It's got 3 separate campaigns, but I don't think any of the campaigns are that good, to be honest. And then we had revivals. We had like Resident Evil 7, which brought the franchise back, although it still had some hate because it was first person. So a lot of people didn't enjoy that style of gameplay. But I thought it was good. I thought a first-person horror game technically can work. It can work very well because you have the perspective. You feel like it's maybe you that's playing around the game. But I think it's probably the closest we got to the original games because it still had the original gameplay. You had to find items to unlock new pathways and to solve puzzles, and there was limited ammo, so it basically was a classic Resident Evil game, just that it was in first person. And they did a lot of things. They basically rehashed the original Resident Evil game because you had it's not a mansion, but it's like a big house. And then in Resident Evil 1, if you remember, you go to the guard house, and it's like there's lots of water, and it's just like a back area of the house. And that's in Resident Evil 7. You do the same thing. You kind of go into this back house with water, and then obviously you've got the lab, which again, Resident Evil 7, you go down, there's a lab. So I feel like Resident Evil 7 tried to sort of reimagine the first Resident Evil game, and it did a really good job. I really enjoyed it. And then the latest mainline title was the Village game, which was basically like, okay, so we kind of reimagined Resident Evil 1, let's reimagine Resident Evil 4. And so they got the village, they got the castle, they had the water part with the boat. It's the exact same. If you look at 7, you can see it's just the same as the first game. You look at Village, it's the same as Resident Evil 4. They've just sort of changed up the locations a little bit, but it's ultimately the same thing, really. But still a great game, much more action orientated, like Resident Evil 4 and 5. And it did have a few surprising, horrifying moments with the room with the house with the ventriloquist, I think it was. But still both great games. I'm really curious to see what they do with Resident Evil 9 now, because it's that they're at a point now where 7 and 8 was Ethan. You played as Ethan Winters, and his story has ended now. So I think Resident Evil 9 was rumoured to include Chris Redfield. But I don't know if they're going to keep the first person perspective or if they're going to go back to a third person. I'm not really sure. So does the first person perspective die with Ethan Winters, or is that just how the mainline games are going to go now? They're all going to be first person and we're just going to have the third person for the remakes. I'm not really sure. I'm not even sure what I would prefer if Resident Evil 9 was first person. I don't think I would mind that much, to be honest. But I think it's fair to say most people prefer the third person games or the over the shoulder kind of games to the first person ones. Schemecause says, have you played any of the modern indie survival horror style games like Tormented Souls and Song of Horror? I haven't, not yet. That was something I was going to talk about other existing survival horror games that are out there. I played the demo for Tormented Souls, and graphically it looked good. I feel like they could maybe work up the menus a little bit, like the inventory and stuff. I feel like they just needed a few tweaks, but it seemed like a good game. One thing I didn't like was when you fought one of the enemies, it was like this monster in a wheelchair, and it was like every time you fired at the monster he would sort of like recoil, but the chair would also like recoil in the air, and it was so ridiculous. It just looked so unrealistic, you know, like it should just be the body that moves, not the entire chair in the air, you know. But I don't know if that was just a weird monster design that they used. But it is a game that I do want to play, and I think the second game is coming out as well, Tormented Souls 2. But I really need to check it out. I need to give indie games a bit more love, especially when I'm trying to make a classic survival horror game. It's nice to check out and see what other indie developers are making classic survival horror games as well. So I'll probably check that out soon. There was another game, I can't remember the name of it, but it was like a Spanish developer. I think it was like a university, and I think Sony funded them, and they made a survival horror game. And it's got its issues. It does look a bit funky, but we're at a state now where it's like we'll just take what we can get, to be honest. We don't really get that many classic survival horror games. That's mainly one of the reasons why I wanted to make one, because I love the genre, but also we don't really get to see too many of them getting released. In Song of Horror, I've saw the image. It's like a white image with like this, I don't know what kind of creature it is, but it's like it's kind of painted like black and white. It does look quite interesting, but I've never played it. There's another horror game as well that was meant to be like PT as well, which I never played. So yeah, definitely give love to more of these indie horror developers, especially if they're making survival horror games. Just got to find the time to do it. Skincost also says Echoes of the Living looks very promising also, but it's not out yet. Yeah, it's funny, I actually applied for a voice acting role for that project. I don't think I got it, to be honest. But it does look really good. It's the same guy. He's an indie developer. I think the devs are called Moonglint, and it's just one guy. And if you know the YouTube channel Residents of Evil, they basically just cover everything Resident Evil. They hired that guy, that studio, to make like their own survival horror game. But I don't know what's happened to that. I don't know if they've canned it, if they've shelved it, if it's still under development. But this guy, he's been making Resident Evil 1 remakes as well. He's been making them in Unreal Engine, I think. And so now, yeah, he's making this Echoes of the Living. It does look really good. Hopefully he can nail it. I'm going to try and nail my game as well, even though I'm extremely inexperienced at making games. But if Subject can get close, or it can be one of the top survival horror indie games, I'll be very happy. Resident Evil 7 was incredible in VR. Sadly, never had VR, never got to experience it. And even if I got PlayStation VR 2, I don't think most games are backwards compatible, so I would need to buy the first VR probably just to play Resi 7, but Village looks really good to play in VR, PlayStation VR 2. But it's just very expensive right now, and it's a dream of mine to experience VR. It's going to have to wait and see what the future holds, but it does look like a really good experience. Plus, if you want to play the original Resident Evil 4, you need to get the Meta Quest 2 or 3, which again is more expensive and it's an exclusive game. But I think for PlayStation VR 2 there's also going to be Resident Evil 4 Remake VR as well for free. So yeah, there's a lot of Resident Evil VR experiences I'd love to play. Just it's not just the money, but it's also like, am I going to play it long enough to justify the purchase? Like, is it going to be something that I play and put down and never touch again? Or is it something that I'm going to love and be obsessed with and just play VR games all the time? I don't know. But I think it would be quite funny because I do see some videos where it's like you can control like your hands and your arms with the VR controllers. I think if I played Village, like, you don't even need to play it legitimately. You could just like run around and just like sort of role play and just sort of make up your own little scenarios and just do funny stuff. Like, I would love to experiment and do that kind of stuff as well, but just the question of what would I do it long term? Would it justify the costs, you know? Scheme Cost says, so is 8, although I only played the demo so far. Yeah, it does look really good in VR. One day I'll get to try it. Swipeful says, Tormented Souls. Yeah, it's an indie game on PS4, and the second game's coming out soon. I think it's like there's a woman, I don't know if she's lost an eye or something, but she's got like a bandage on the front of her face, and she's in like this mental asylum. I don't really know too much about the story, but yeah, you just need to make your way through this mental asylum, and there's these kind of messed up creatures, and there's a doctor guy. The problem is some of the voice acting is really bad, but I don't know if that's expected for a classic survival horror. I won't be doing that with my game though. I'm going to try and have decent voice acting at least. Game Cost says, have you seen any of the games from Dead Drop Studios? They are very low budget but have potential if they had more budget and team members. It's just 1 or 2 guys though. Nope, never heard of them. So they are making survival horror games as well. What kind of platforms do they release to? I'll need to have a look and see. Scheme Cost also says they make so many zombie games it's unreal. Alright. There's actually this these indie games. I don't know why it's like shovelware, but I see them all the time on the PlayStation Store. It's called Outbreak, and there's about, I don't know, like 10 different games, and they're all different styles, and God knows what they're doing. But they just released them all like together. They just threw them all on the store, like 5 of them, and then later on more came. But it looks really low budget. It looks like they just sort of threw them together. But hey, that could be me in the future, because I'm going to start talking about game dev and game engines soon. I might be making some trashy stuff coming to a console near you. Small Who Man says, shame they make VR stuff so expensive, because that stuff does sound really fun to mess with. Yeah, I think if you want like a cheaper version, you're going to have to go with like the Quest 2 at least. But obviously, if you compare it to PlayStation VR 2, like the graphics are going to be much lower, because the Quest 2 is more like a mobile kind of VR, and PlayStation VR 2 is more like proper big console VR games. So I think you know, you get what you pay for. But I don't know. I don't know if I would get a Quest, because at the same time, if I want to play VR, I do want decent graphics. I want to feel immersed, you know? It's not just about um, it's not just about me having fun with the games, you know? Skincost says VR is incredible, but it's not for everyone. Motion sickness is a problem for many, and it's not at a point where it needs to be right now. It needs to reach a point where most games are in VR. Yeah, I would love to play like a VR version of like my favorite games. You know, it's just a shame we don't really get to see that. You know, just feels like it's a very independent thing. Like you're playing a normal game or you're playing a VR game. It's never like, okay, all these normal games also have VR mode, you know, which would be great. I would definitely get into VR then. I think there'd be a lot more value, especially if you don't have to keep buying games like separately. You buy you buy your game, and then you can choose if you want to play it in VR or not. Obviously, not every game's going to suit VR. Not every dev has got the resources to make VR on top of the existing game, but it would definitely help sell more units, because you would get access to more games, more experiences. I would love to live stream and do some fun stuff. I think that's the coolest thing about VR for me. Like, it's so interactive. You know, like you can make funny stuff in normal games, but if you're in VR and you're moving your hands around and picking things up and, you know, interacting with the environment, I think it would be a lot better, you know, a lot more fun, especially horror games. My god, can you imagine walking around a horror game in VR? I'd be absolutely terrified. But hopefully VR does expand and it becomes more affordable. Whether it's going to happen on PlayStation or if it's just going to be like a mobile thing, I don't know. But I'm definitely curious to check it out and see what it's all about. I Let me see. Small Man says, I tried VR once and it made me feel so weird. It was unreal. I hated it. But now I really want to give it another chance. Yeah, some people say you get like motion sickness, and I feel like maybe it's just not for everyone, you know? That's what I worry about. I have this like cool idea of playing VR, but then that could get ruined by the fact that I might get motion sickness. That would be terrible if I get out of the box. I think like everyone's going to feel some kind of sickness when you first try VR, because it's so different. You know, you need to get used to the motion, and it's probably better if you stick to like certain games. Like some VR games work better when you're stationary in the game. So like if you're sitting down in a car or a spaceship or something, it's much easier because you're not moving around so much. As soon as you start walking and then looking around, I think that's when it gets much more complicated. Skincost says Outbreak is one of the many games. Oh yes. Oh, so they're the ones that make the Outbreak games. Jesus, I've only really looked at the trailers and some of the images they put on the store, but I don't know why they just upload so many of the same game. I don't even know if they're that good. I just assumed they were like these shovelware kind of games, you know, these trashy kind of games. But if they're just, you know, two guys just trying to learn their trade, make a living, you know, gradually trying to improve their games and their skills, then alright, not too bad. But yeah, I'm probably not going to buy those kind of games. I think if I went to proper indie dev, I would still try and be quite ambitious with my games. I don't think I would. Resort to just making like really cheap and easy kind of games for platinum trophies. You know, those games where it's like 5 minutes, get a platinum. I don't know if I could sell my soul and do something like that, you know. Swickful says, have you played Signalis? Apparently it's meant to be a real solid survival horror. It's cheap as well, on sale I think. Yeah, I played a bit of it on Game Pass. Unfortunately, I think it's leaving Game Pass. I don't know if it's tomorrow or the day after, which is a big shame. But yeah, it was pretty cool. It's like a pixelated top-down survival horror. It's like a sci-fi game. It does look really good. I've played other pixelated survival horror games, like if you heard of oh no, I forgot. I think it's called Lone Survivor. It's like a 2D kind of survival horror game, very much like Silent Hill. I find it hard to keep track of those games though, because it's like, since the games are 2D and they try and create like a 3D map that you need to follow, but because it's in 2D, it's hard to like figure out like, okay, where am I? What corridor am I on? Like, it's just a little bit to wrap your head around. And there was another game as well. I think it was called Claire. That's another 2D survival horror game, which is pretty good. I played both of them when they were on PlayStation Plus. They were pretty damn good games. But different, because if you're used to playing survival horror games in 3D, it's quite a big difference when you're going to the 2D perspective. But if I ever get into indie gaming, I'm probably going to have to make some kind of 2D game first before I go all 3D. Small Who-Man says, damn, those menus were crazy. Then I thought you switched from Dreams to something else. Yep, just Dreams. Just Dreams. Hey Nizlo, welcome to the stream. What game is this? This is Dreams. So this is just like one of the games that you can play. So I've just been chatting away, and we've just been playing a few little games. So we were playing, like, someone made like a backrooms kind of game. These guys made like a point and click adventure. I think this is like a Castlevania kind of game. I'll put this one on. We'll see what that's like. But there's a lot of really good stuff. This guy makes like really good graphics, so you can do a lot of stuff with Dreams. Make animations. This is like one of the most famous ones, because this guy made, basically it's like a, I'll stick it on. It's basically like a 3D Mario kind of game. He's made tons of worlds on it as well. So I'll stick this on, show you what this is like. I've just got the sound down just now because I'm going to use this stream to make videos later, so I need to take the game volume off. But Skincos said, you can have an out-of-body experience after using VR. I had it for the first week, then it never returned. So it's kind of like a one and done kind of thing. So yeah, like, I bet you didn't expect Dreams to be able to make games like this. I mean, it's pretty much like a mix between Mario, Crash Bandicoot. And all of this stuff is really easy to make as well. Like, see that rock? I mean, it's pretty simple. You just make stuff with shapes and then you can paint on top of them. The hardest part is obviously making characters and stuff. There we go. We found one duck, 1 of 6. Yeah, I think this guy got hired by I can't remember the name of the developers, but they made Ori, the Ori games, the Blind Forest and the Will of the Wisp. They hired the guy that made this game as a level designer, which is pretty cool. Yeah, this was like one of the last games to win awards before Media Molecule kind of abandoned Dreams. I blame Sony though, obviously. Yeah, certain games are definitely much easier than others in VR. Spectron says, even after all these years, VR just feels too much like a gimmick. Very high cost of entry and very unlikely to be used for longer than just a few weeks. Yeah, I've never experienced VR yet. I'm sure I'm going to love it, but yeah, that's what I was thinking. Like, you could get VR, PlayStation VR 2, spend all that money, and then you play it for like a couple of weeks, and then it's like, I'm sort of done with it. Because I have a friend who got it, and he enjoyed VR, but then he was like, it takes a lot out of you, I think, to play VR as well. Like, you need to have energy. So when you come home from work and it's like, okay, now you need to stand up and throw around these controllers, it's quite tiring. It's kind of like what happened to me when I was playing the Wii. If you remember, there was a Zelda game that come out, what was it called again? Skyward Sword or something? And they brought out like a new Wii controller. It was like Wii Control Plus or something, and it basically made it more advanced. So like as you moved the Wii remote around, like your sword would actually move exactly as you did. So pretty much like how VR works now. But it was like I just got so lazy to play it because it was like, oh, I need to stand up when I play these games. I can't sit down. So you're having to like swing your sword about. You're having to like, if you want to throw a bomb, you had to roll it like a bowling ball. And the nunchuck or whatever it's called, the other Wii remote, you had to use it as like a shield, and you had to like draw it up and block attacks. And then if you used like your bow and arrow, you'd have to use both of them together to fire that. And it was like it was fun, but then it's like, oh my god, I can't be bothered doing this. Like, if I play games for like 2 hours, a 2 hour session, like there's no way I'm gonna play the Wii like that or do VR, because I think it would just tire you out. You would just get so destroyed. Let me just kill this wee guy if I don't die. Bing. Yeah, so that's my concern with VR and things like that. So Spectron also said, I like the concept, but when the VR headset is even more expensive than the device you want to use it on, as is the case with the PlayStation VR 2, it's usually hard to justify the costs. Yeah, it's more expensive than a PS5, isn't it? Something like that. So yeah, that game did look like Micro Machines. That was another great Wii game. Scamecost says, I've only played Dead Drop's top-down pixelated zombie game, which is really good, and their classic fixed camera Dino Crisis rip-off, which is okay for what it is, but let down by combat and voice acting. Yeah, I think that's what's probably going to let me down if I make my own survival horror game. The fact that I need to, make a good game when you have all that inexperience, it's not easy. Skin Cost also says, which uses AI voices, something I'll be doing for my game, but only as a placeholder. Yeah, be careful with that AI. Those AI voices, I was saying to Ninzolo today that that game, what was it called, The Finals, they are using AI voices, and a lot of people are hating on it because it's like you're taking away work from actual people, which makes sense. So here we have the world map of the game, which is amazing. So the creator's been updating this game for quite a while now, so he made like Let's see what this world is. Right, it's part 2 of the beach, and then I think he's got like right. We need 8 anchors for this one, so this is like a blizzard kind of snowy kind of place, and then I think there's another world. I think he made like a fire sandy kind of world. I don't know what it is though. Must be somewhere on the map. Oh, is this it here? Yeah, here it's here. But you need 16. Crazy detail. Ninzolo says, still to play Dreams in my ever-increasing backlog. Yeah, Dreams is interesting because there's like there's so many games to play already. You know, it's like if you consider this as part of your backlog, it's going to take you forever because there's so many games to play, and there's so many new games that are coming out all the time. Plus, you can make your own games as well, which is a massive time sink. So Dreams is one of those games where it's like it has to be like your main game, you know, because it's like it just takes up so much time. It's a talking ghost. Absolutely crazy that PlayStation and abandoned this game as they gave it away and increased the player base. I know. I think like Media Molecule, they obviously made mistakes when it came to the development of Dreams. Like there's certain things they could have done to optimize their development, but also obviously Sony called the shots. So if they're not making money, then well, they don't see potential. They're just going to get rid of it, really. But yeah, they recently laid off a lot of people at Media Molecule, and today at Bungie as well. So it's a sad time in gaming right now. A lot of people getting let go, losing their jobs. Not even their own fault, you know. Don't really know what's going on at Sony at the moment. Yeah, pretty quality game. Well, that's mad. So many people getting hired via mods, etc. Yeah, I think that's the way it should be. I think you should be able to get hired by using things like Little Big Planet and Dreams and mods. Because at the end of the day, you're a creative person with good ideas, or you're not. You know, so it's like if you can do it, why should you be restricted when it's clear you can do it? You just need to learn the tools, really. And if you can do that, you're good to go. But there's a lot of roles as well, like level design. You don't really need to know how to make graphics for level design. You can just like put down blocks, like basic blocks, and then obviously the gameplay designers and the animators, they'll create a character for you, and then you can run about with the character and the abilities, and the programmers will get all that stuff sorted. So there's still positions that you can get that are just, you don't really need to use like crazy software, just need to be good at getting your ideas across. Agree with the gimmick. I'd buy it, use it for a few weeks and never again. Yeah, for VR it's like I'm still really curious. I just know that it's too expensive to gamble on right now. Like if you're just going to play it for a few weeks, it just doesn't make sense, you know. Swickfo says, yeah, and you can't do long sessions, probably 2 hours tops in VR. Sitting down on the sofa with a controller is still king. Yeah. Like I said, I bought that Zelda game. I got the new Wii controller. I was ready for it. I was like, oh, this is going to be a great experience. I'm going to love this. I'm going to feel so much more immersed in the game because of it. But then you need to figure out how you're going to, like, how it's going to work with your eyes, you know, because your eyes are going to get strained and you're going to get so tired, like jumping about and, you know, like you're actually wielding a sword and a shield, and it just takes up too much energy, I think. So it's like the idea's nice, concept of actually playing these kind of games and making it feel like you're sort of in the Matrix and part of the experience, but obviously at the same time, you need to be ready for that kind of sacrifice. And most people, they just want to come home, relax, play for a little bit. Like I'm playing this sort of 3D Mario type platformer right now. You know, I'm just sitting, I'm enjoying collecting things, even though I'm maybe not that great at it. But imagine if I had to like jump around my living room, like to actually do everything here. You just wouldn't do it, you know? Be madness. Skimcar says, I always sit down in VR because I'm too lazy to be standing all the time. A few games require you to stand though. Yeah, I think it's like with the Wii, it's like I feel naturally I need to stand because like you need to point the controller at the TV, or you need to point it up and to different directions and swing it about. And I feel like if I sit down, I feel more limited in what I can actually do, you know? So yeah, I feel like I need to stand most of the time. It also says I can do 8 hours easy in VR, but I'm one of the few who isn't affected by motion sickness. Yeah, I'm curious to see if I'm affected by motion sickness, because the only thing that ever made me sick was when I used to go on long drives. That car sickness, that basically got me. And I don't know, I don't really go on the water very often, so I don't know if I would get like seasickness and stuff like that, but I guess it's all related. Spectron says, or you can make your own music too. Yep, you could do that too. Just need to learn how to. Cost says, thoughts on Texas Massacre game LBA? I love it, but I absolutely suck at it. I'm so bad at escaping. Yeah, that was a game I wanted to talk about as well, the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. It's a game that's very similar to Dead by Daylight, isn't it? And then you've got the Friday the 13th game as well, which tried to do the same thing basically, where you've got like it's a multiplayer game. You've got like 4 players trying to escape by activating generators or finding keys for cars and petrol or whatever, and then you've got a killer that's trying to basically stop you. So it's an interesting concept. I played Friday the 13th. I hated it because I felt like the game specifically was poorly made. Like it just didn't feel good to play, you know? Whereas Dead by Daylight, I actually quite enjoyed that. It's much more fluid. The only thing I don't like about Dead by Daylight is the fact that it's basically repetitive because you're just doing like the same objectives over and over and over and over. I don't know if they've updated it and changed things, but most of the time they add like new killers. Sometimes they've got themed things, like they added like Silent Hill, for example. You can go Pyramid Head. You can go Nemesis from Resident Evil. There's the Stranger Things monster. You can do all those kind of things. But I don't know, the objectives themselves, like activate all the generators and then escape. You know, it's like it's fun when you're escaping the monsters and stuff. It can get quite thrilling, especially when you're with a friend. It's quite exciting. But I just feel like doing the same thing over and over again, eventually it starts to grate on me a little bit. So when it came to the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, I didn't really give it a chance because I thought, oh, just with the same kind of thing, really. You're just trying to escape, you know? But I don't want to bash it because it does look like a good game. I think it's just my style of game is not that, basically. But I do like the idea of like a co-op horror game like that. Is it Phantasmagoria or something? I don't know, Phantasmophobia or whatever, I don't know. It's like you're sort of like ghost hunters and you go around checking for paranormal things. That looks quite cool. think that was meant to come out on PlayStation. I don't know if it did, if it got delayed, but that game looked quite interesting as well. But yeah, I think I sort of played it on the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. I sort of played it when I was on Game Pass, which is pretty good for trying out some new games, you know. But yeah, like I said, it wasn't really my type of game, and it's hard to find time to play it with friends, because I think that's when you get the best out of it. But it does look good for people that like that kind of game. I think it does look pretty cool. Would like to see something like that in Dreams, but unfortunately there's no online multiplayer anymore, so we'll never be able to create our own Dead by Daylight game. Spectron says, I won't deny Media Molecule handled Dreams rather poorly overall, but I've noticed a general trend that Sony likes to shut down any studio that still has any creative ideas left. It's kind of sad. And who knows what they're going to do, because they were supposed to be opening up, well, starting more projects for games as a service, mad live service games. Like 60% of their output was going to be live service. And then rumours say they've apparently abandoned that idea, and now they're going to try and go back to single player games again and revive like old franchises and things like that, which would be a smart move. I think a lot of the devs that they have are quite unhappy. I don't think they want to work on live service games or multiplayer games. I think single player is definitely where they want to be at with their game dev. Spectrum also says, if you don't make third-person cinematic movie games or live service games, you're getting axed. Pretty much, yeah. It's whatever the money is, basically. That's what they're going to do, really. Schemecast says, they have a game like Mario platformer in VR LBA, but you don't need to physically jump or anything. It's just like playing the standard way, but far more immersive. Yeah, I've seen games like, let's try to remember the names. What was it called? There was one where you're like a little mouse, and it's like there's two different books, like two different games, but they're called books. And it's kind of like an action platformer, but you're just sort of like looking down as if you're looking in the book, or you're looking like a god down on the characters. And I think it was the same with the Astrobot game, the first one that was on the PlayStation 4. The same idea, 3D platformer, but it's just the view, like you can actually look around the environment like this with your VR. So I guess that's another really good way that you can showcase VR as well. Schemecast also says, remember when Dreams was going to have multiplayer create mode? Nvidia is having the same thing now, which they're calling Omniverse. Interesting. So how does this Omniverse work? Is this a VR thing as well, or can you just boot it up on your PC? It does sound quite promising, actually, because creating together, it's always going to, like, especially remotely. Nowadays everyone's working from home and stuff. If you could create in the one scene together, that would be perfect for collaborations. Moss and Astrobot are the VR platformers. That's it. The one with the mouse, it's called Moss. Both amazing third-person games, work surprisingly well in VR. A lot of people actually prefer third-person VR. Yeah, it's probably easier on the eyes, isn't it? If you don't have to do crazy stuff. Yeah, that's definitely what I would do anyway if I was making VR. But it's so sad because I wanted to get VR for Dreams, so I'd have to get the original VR, but it's not meant to be as good. But I would love to make like a VR horror game, but at the same time I don't know if the first PlayStation VR is good enough. Like if I got VR, I made my own VR game, even if it was just for myself or just to stream and show you guys. You know, no one's going to play it, but I always think like, is it worth investing in that just to make a VR game, or if I should just wait and make VR like proper VR outside of Dreams, you know? So I'm gonna have a quick look. I brought up like some horror games that came out this year. So we had Dead Space, the remake. Don't know if anyone ever played the original Dead Space. That was a great game. Like that came close or maybe better at replicating Resident Evil 4 at the time back on the PS3. The remake is also on EA Play now, which I think is like $3.99 a month. So you could technically finish the game in a month for $3.99. That's a pretty good price. And it's also on Game Pass if you have Xbox as well. So yeah, Dead Space remake. That was one that I wanted to try for quite a long time now. But it didn't have the same appeal to me as the Resident Evil 2, 3, 4 remakes because they changed things up a bit, whereas this Dead Space remake, I think it's mostly the same game as the original. I think they just connected more of the ship together to make it more of like a continuous experience, and maybe there's a few other tweaks they did that I'm not sure about. Omniverse is also bringing all major programs into one suite to make it easier to work between the various programs needed to make games. It won't beat the simplicity of Dreams though. Yeah, it does sound a bit more complicated, but at least it's a start, I suppose. I suppose like Dreams should be like the model. Like let's make Dreams, but let's put it on PC. Let's allow people to make games, publish their games on PC and console and mobile, but just give us the tools that are all interconnected and easier to sort of use. And that's like the perfect scenario. I don't know why somebody doesn't just basically make Dreams but for professionals, you know? That would be perfect. Spectron says, I played the original Dead Space, which was a great game. I didn't bother with the remake. Yeah, the remake, I think that's how I feel. The remake looks really good, but I'm not that bothered about it because it doesn't change enough of it. So it's like, it'll still be a great game, especially for new people coming into it. But I think I preferred playing the Resi 4 remake recently, which was another game that came out this year. I think compared to Dead Space remake and Resident Evil 4 remake, I think Resident Evil 4 remake did more for the sort of remake formula. They tried to get the original game with better graphics, but also they changed a lot of the layout, and a lot of the things that happened were different, especially with the story and the cutscenes and everything. That was completely redone. Skin Cost says, can't wait to play the Dead Space remake, but yeah, it doesn't have the same appeal to me as Resident Evil. Yeah, like I said, it's on Game Pass, so you can play it there, or if you have an EA Play subscription, even if it's a one-off for 1 month, you can get it there for much cheaper, because this was like a £70 game at the time, so it was not cheap. 100%, that would truly be the dream. Yeah, if we can get everything together, it would be perfect. But I'm going to talk more about sort of game engine stuff in a moment. I'm just going to quickly look down some of the other games we had this year. So we had Dead Space remake, we had Resident Evil 4 remake, which was fantastic. We had the Separate Ways DLC with Ada, which I still need to play, but apparently it's like 4 hours long, so it's a decent length. It's like the length of Resident Evil 3 remake, so that's always good. So it's good that they're continuing to support that. Plus there is going to be a PlayStation VR 2 mode as well. What else did we have? Let me see. So there's things like Sons of the Forest. I don't know if anyone ever played The Forest. Didn't look like my kind of game. It was more like a crafting kind of game. with survival elements. But I think it was quite unique because I think the islanders, they were very unpredictable. They weren't always hostile, or sometimes they would snap and suddenly they would become hostile. But I've never played it or the Sons of the Forest sequel. There's the Outlast Trials. Is that out yet? I don't know if that's out yet. I think it's coming to PC. I know you like the game, Spectron. I know you love your Outlast games, so I think this new one might be pretty good. Just for me, it's the Outlast games have always been good, but they kind of made me a bit dizzy and made me feel quite sick, especially the second game because it was much longer, so there was much more chase scenes, and I just couldn't handle it that much. What else is there? There was the Layers of Fear remake, which again I've not played, but as we were talking about Bluebird Team, they mostly make these walking simulator kind of games, so I want to try their original games and maybe even the Layers of Fear remake, but I don't know if I'm going to be that interested in it. Then we had the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, which if you're into multiplayer games, it does look pretty good. There was Amnesia: The Bunker. I've not really played many Amnesia games. I did try The Bunker on Game Pass, and it has a kind of a rough start. I mean, it's kind of weird. Like, I don't know. I feel like you can tell it's an indie game. You know, it's kind of rough around the edges. But I've heard the original game is meant to be a classic. Even if it is old now, I definitely still want to try it. And we were talking about classic survival horror games that are coming out from indie developers. There's one called Daymare. I think the original one was Daymare 1998, and there's a sequel coming out called Sandcastle. It's called Daymare 1994 Sandcastle. My issue with most of the indie games, the survival horror games, especially like 3D games, it's obviously harder to make these games. So, and it's a much smaller team, so it's going to be a lot more difficult to stand up with things. The Resident Evil games, they're just not going to get on that level, so you're probably going to have to just accept that there's going to be some teething problems, let's say. There was a game called Stray Souls that I think is coming out soon. I think it's from some of the creators of Silent Hill, and it looks like a kind of third person shooter kind of horror as well. Does look pretty good. But I'm looking at some of there's other horror games that come out, but not many that I actually know about. I think there's Dead Island 2. Technically it's a horror game, maybe not a scary game, but it's definitely got zombies and everything, so it's got a horror theme around it. I never really got into the first Dead Island. I thought it was a bit glitchy. It used to crash all the time on me, so I just gave up on it. And then for a long time, Dead Island 2 was just basically dead. Like, it was just nowhere to be seen. And then the developers, they went off, they made Dying Light 1 and 2. And then there's a new developer that came in. In fact, this is the second new developer, because the original guys, they made Spec Ops: The Line. They were supposed to make Dead Island 2, but then I don't know what happened. They just got shut down and got replaced. But again, I've not played Dead Island 2 yet, because like same with Dying Light and stuff, it's just, I don't know if it's not really a survival horror game, you know, it's just like a open world sandbox game, parkour with zombies and stuff. But I'm sure it's fun, especially if you play on co-op. It would be quite good. But I think for big games, that's mostly what it was. Dead Space, Resident Evil 4, Texas Chainsaw Massacre. We had Alan Wake 2 just came out as well, which looks excellent. I'm really looking forward to playing that game, especially now because the first game was more like an action thriller with some horror elements, and the new one that's coming out the new one that is out is meant to be like a proper survival horror game. So I'm looking forward to getting stuck into that at some point. Spectron says, I didn't play Outlast Trials. The multiplayer aspect really put me off, to be honest. Oh, is it multiplayer? Ah, that's right. So again, another horror game trying to do multiplayer and perhaps failing at doing so. What are some of the other horror games that are coming out? There's Killer Clowns from Outer Space, the game, which, just by looking at it, I think it's going to be like a Dead by Daylight kind of game. It's an adaptation of the 1980s cult classic film. But yeah, it's PvP, where players are either humans trying to survive the invasion of the alien clowns or the killer clowns. It will be a 3v7 game where players are dropped into a randomly generated world. That's quite interesting, so it's randomly generated. So they have to explore, gather loot and weapons, avoid being captured by the clowns. Meanwhile, the different clowns have their own mix of unique, wacky weapons similar to the film to hunt each of the humans down hiding in the map. So yeah, it seems like that's another Dead by Daylight kind of game. Schemecross says, I'm tempted to wait until I build my gaming PC before getting the new Alan Wake game. Yeah, could do. I'm just going to get it on the PS3, to be honest. I think mostly for gaming stuff, I'll just stick to my PS5 because it's powerful enough, and then I'll just use like a stronger PC for streaming and game dev, I think. Another game that's coming out, there's quite a few Silent Hill games that are coming out. One's called Silent Hill Townfall. It's a developer called No Code. They made a game called Stories Untold and Observation. So now they're making Silent Hill Townfall, but I don't think they've really said too much about the game yet. I think they just kind of teased it, and that's been it really. Their past work has more been like a horror puzzle type of gameplay experience. So I think that's probably what we should expect from Silent Hill Townfall, just more of like a slow pace kind of thing. There's a game called Deathground. It's like a survival dinosaur game. It looks like they use the alien radar to sort of figure out where the dinosaurs are. So it looks a bit like Dino Crisis. There's a game that's just coming out in a few days, I think, called Quantum Error. Apparently it's getting really bad reviews though. I think I'll need to read exactly what's wrong with it. I think the story is meant to be okay, but I think like the gameplay and the animations and everything, it's just not executed too well. But apparently it was only made by 4 brothers, so it's, again, it's expected. These kind of ambitious 3D games, they're not made by a lot of people, so they normally don't turn out so well either. Skincost says, yeah, that Dino game looks great. It's the one I'm thinking of. Or the, what was it called? Deathground it's called. Yeah, it looks interesting. Plus there's another dinosaur game that's coming out, like Dino Crisis. Classic survival horror game, but I can't remember the name. Then we've got Alone in the Dark. It's like a reboot. It was meant to come out this year, but it got delayed. It's got that actor from Stranger Things, and it's meant to look a little bit like Resident Evil, like with the over-the-shoulder camera, like Resident Evil 4, but I guess it's using like the theme and setting of the old games, so it's going to be set in, I don't know what year it's set in, but it's quite far back, and it's going to be more about a detective kind of game. So it's got me curious, but again, it's another indie developer, so I don't know if they're going to deliver, because whenever indie developers try these ambitious 3D games, it's always difficult to get it to pay off. There's one called Paranormal Tales. It's like a found footage kind of game. Looks like you go around with a camera. Kind of creepy. Something called Buy Sweet Carol. It looks a lot like a Disney kind of game, like the way it's drawn. It's about a girl who's fleeing an orphanage that's overrun with rabbits. Yeah, it sounds terrifying. Um, you'll have to transform into one of the rabbits and work your through the dimensions to learn the truth and get out in one piece. Well, that sounds interesting. There's Tormented Souls 2, so like we were talking about the first game, the second game's coming out soon. What is she doing in this game? So she's trying to be with her sister to get a normal life, but you know that's impossible. When her sister falls ill, she has to wander around haunted and supernatural places to find a way to cure her. So Caroline will have to face the horrors of terrifying nature, have to craft weapons to combat them. Everything you find can be put to work as a weapon. So that's quite interesting. It's got like a Dead Rising kind of vibe about it, trying to create your own weapons. There's actually another dinosaur game here called The Lost Wild. It says it puts you on a mysterious island that is full of dinosaurs while also being full of facilities that were clearly run by humans once upon a time. You're asking questions like what led you to this place, what happened to the other humans that were here. So you'll get answers as you dive deeper into the island while also being mindful of the dinosaurs around you. Not all are threats, but plenty will come after you if you give them the chance. So the supplies and weapons will be limited and you'll need to survive. So I don't know if it's like a classic survival horror game or if it's like a first person game. There's also games like Stalker 2, which I've never played the first one, but I guess it's kind of like Metro, isn't it? Like you're trying to survive in this kind of nuclear destroyed world. So the original game came out in 2007. This game's taken a lot of time to come out, I think because of the war that's ongoing right now, because I think the developers are from Ukraine. So it does look like a really good game. Looks very similar to Metro. There's a game called Ill, which I've seen the trailer for, and the graphics do look fantastic. I think it's got a lot of blood and gore, plenty of really creepy looking monsters, but the graphics do look excellent. There's another one called The Retrieval. It's a VR adventure in the future. Looks like it's set on like a spaceship or something. So you wander around a ship called the Prometheus, which I'm sure won't have any issues calling it the Prometheus. Solve puzzles and attempt to figure out the truth. So I don't know if there's any combat in it, but there you go. There's another horror VR game coming out. Another dinosaur game called Instinction. There's so many dinosaur games coming out now, but no Dino Crisis, unfortunately. So it's an action game. You can play both first person and third person. You traverse through vast and big worlds where you complete quests. While exploring, you need to be aware of the surrounding danger. So it seems like more of an open world kind of take on things. There's a game called Routine. It's an action adventure game set in a science fiction tone. The game started development 10 years ago, but then stumbled into basically development hell. But after years of silence, they put out a trailer, and now it looks like they're gearing up for a release. I can't remember if that's the game they were promoting at that Game Awards. Was it Routine? I can't remember. But I've not really heard much about it before. There's another game called Beneath. So it's like, it seems like Bioshock kind of thing. You're underwater, you're diving into some other place. It's like you're trapped in an underwater world. And it looks like ammo is more limited as well. So it just looks like a modern take on Bioshock, really. There's one called Level 0. It's a multiplayer game, so it's like Dead by Daylight again, 4vs2 kind of thing with monsters. There was the Stray Souls I was talking about. Let me see if I can get more details on it. So you're in a town. It looks a lot like Silent Hill, like very foggy. really grotesque kind of creatures. Then we've got Silent Hill F. That's the other Silent Hill game. Still, I don't think we still have any idea about what this game is going to be, just like Townfall. All we've really got is the image of this girl who looks like she's covered in flowers that almost look like fungus, like The Last of Us. It's the same people that made Resident Evil Resistance, which doesn't give me a lot of confidence. That was like a multiplayer game, I think, that came with Resident Evil 3 Remake. So yeah, I'm not really excited about that if that's the developer, but still got to see gameplay for it, so we'll just have to see what happens with that. But one of the biggest games I'm looking forward to coming out is Little Nightmares 3. It's basically a brand new developer this time around because the original developers got bought. I can't remember who bought them, but it basically meant they couldn't work on Little Nightmares anymore, so Bandai Namco have gotten a different developer. It's actually the developers who made the Dark Pictures games, so like Until Dawn and The Quarry and all those kind of movie type games. They're the ones that are behind Little Nightmares 3, so hopefully they keep the theme of childlike horror, but also add in quite some disturbing things. But hopefully it's another good adventure, because I love the first two games. So just need to wait and see what it's going to be like. But from the trailer, it looked like another kind of co-op kind of game, like the second game, where you need to sort of help each other to get through it. But the world is much more bright and colourful in some cases. It looks like they're in a kind of sand world. So it is good that they're mixing up the locations a little bit, because I think the first one was set in a boat. The second one was more like just going through like the countryside and different buildings throughout the city. So it's quite nice that they're at least doing something a bit different with the desert world in Little Nightmares 3. And the only other game I can think of here is the Silent Hill 2 remake. We already spoke about it quite a lot today. I'm really looking forward to seeing some gameplay, seeing what they can come up with. I also mentioned the game engine for the new Resident Evil game engine. It's called REX. So a lot of people are speculating, like, oh, could it be REX Rex, like a dinosaur? Could it be a Dino Crisis remake? Or could the X be referencing Resident Evil Code Veronica X? Maybe that's also getting a remake. Maybe they're both getting a remake. Who knows? But the name is certainly playing around with people right now. And it would be good to, like, the Resident Evil engine is already really good looking. But it seems like this new engine, maybe it's going to go like full next gen. And I can only imagine the type of games we're going to get to see come from that engine. It's probably one of my favourite engines, to be honest. So I can't wait to see what's coming next. Both from Silent Hill and Resident Evil. Small Who Man says, damn, I can't wait for Little Nightmares 3. Yeah, it's looking pretty good. Really hope it isn't another situation where the third game in the franchise sucks like LBP. Yeah. I think at the very least we'll probably get a decent game. If it's going to be as good as the other two, I don't know. Hopefully they don't hold back on some of the more grotesque kind of monsters. I think they have to stay true to that, you know. But let's see what happens. The hell is this? Call of Duty Zombies, Five Nights at Freddy's. Let me just jump into this. Looks like a horror kind of game. Yeah, so the only other thing I was really going to talk about was the game engines and a new horror game announcement. So, as for the game engines, as we all know, Dreams is kind of on its last legs now. Media Molecule don't really support it anymore in terms of development. They are still trying to support on social media, and on the Dreams servers themselves. They're still picking games and things like that for people to play. So hopefully that lasts a little bit longer, because I don't want to, spend all my time making games and then the servers go down. But I think one way or another, Dreams could last for like another 2 years, could last for 5, 10, who knows. But that's the problem, who knows. So I think I need to start preparing myself for for working on other engines. Obviously, I'll still keep playing Dreams. I'll still keep creating in Dreams, because even if I make games in other engines on the PC, I'm still probably going to use Dreams just to come up with concepts and some artwork and level design and stuff like that. So it's something I'll still continue to use, but I feel like I need to future proof myself and try and make, or at least try and learn how to make games in other engines first. So the ones I've been thinking about, so there's Unity, there's Unreal, and there's a new one I've been looking at called GDevelop. So I'll quickly go through them and sort of say like what my thoughts are on them so far. So basically Unity looks like the one that you would probably go for if you're an indie developer, because I think it caters more to those kind of games. It's also not crazy intensive, but obviously it's got some flaws in itself. Then you've got Unreal Engine, which is going to be much more graphically, let's say, flexible or intensive, I don't know, but it's basically going to be, if you want to make like these big 3D graphically beautiful games, that's the way to go. So I think in an ideal world, if I was to choose one of the two, I would choose Unreal. But the problem I have right now is I don't have the hardware basically to do either, because Unreal was far too strong, and Unity, I'm still going to have the same problems because I want to make 3D games that have good graphics, and obviously I'm not going to be able to do that with my hardware right now. So if I make a game in Unity, I would have to make something like a 2D game, pixelated kind of game. I'm going to have to try and tone down a lot of my ambitions. I can probably still try and make a good game in 2D, but it's just not what I want to do. I want to make these 3D games. That's why I like Dreams so much, because even though it has a lot of flaws, it still allows you to make good looking 3D games in pretty quickly. So those two game engines, it's kind of like, if I'm going to go for one of them in the future when I get a better PC, it's probably going to be Unreal, to be honest, not Unity. But in the meantime, what I was encouraged by was this other one I found called GDevelop, and it's basically it's a game engine that doesn't require programming, so you can basically just focus on building your games like Dreams, and you don't have to focus on learning programming. So it's a good entry point. It's something I can do now, today. I don't need to learn programming. The engine itself doesn't look too complicated, so I could easily start making games in GDevelop from today. Whereas things like Unity and Unreal, I'm probably going to have to wait a bit longer until I get a better PC, but also I'm going to have to learn those engines. I'm going to have to learn programming, and I think that's probably going to take me a good few years from now. Whereas GDevelop, it's like you can just go straight in. Instead of programming, it's basically like an event language. So if you've ever played RPG Maker, it's basically the same thing. You're just saying like for example, if I press X on this door, the door opens, or the door says it's locked, Or it could say like, if I get close enough to that little table there, it will activate some kind of cutscene or something. So it seems like I've used RPG Maker a little bit, And yeah, that you obviously need to learn how it works, but it's not like programming. Like, you'll figure it out pretty quickly. And it's also a little bit like Dreams as well, because there's lots of assets that you can use that solve a lot of things. Like, one of the things they say on the website is like, too many people, when they use Unity or Unreal, they're trying to figure out, how do I make a character walk? Like how do I get a camera, like a first person camera, and get them to walk around? How do I get to, map the buttons to control them? And they say that's really boring to do that. You shouldn't be looking at tutorials on how to do basic movement. So they basically just do it all for you. They just give you like, obviously you can use a keyboard or a controller, or you can use the touch screen, like a joystick, like a digital joystick, and they just kind of throw you in, and the tutorials are like 1 minute long, and it's just like, hey, just get this community asset, put it down, and attach it to the game object, and you're ready to go, really. So I was quite encouraged by all that kind of stuff. Like, obviously I want to make my own assets, I want to make my own unique games, but I think it's a good way to start. And they've recently added the ability to make 3D games, which is really cool, because okay, I could make 2D games with GDevelop, but the fact that I can make 3D games now, and they were saying like, oh, you can make things like Silent Hill, like it's possible. So that got me really excited. So maybe I can, for now, like I'll still use Dreams, I'll still make stuff in Dreams, but I can also start to make more professional stuff in GDevelop. And then over the next 2-3 years, maybe I get a proper game dev PC, and then I'll learn Unreal Engine, and then maybe move from GDevelop into Unreal Engine. But that's like proper in the future. So I'll continue to use Dreams until it basically dies. I'll check out this GDevelop, see if I can learn it and put out some games. Because the good thing about GDevelop as well is like, they have like these publishing tools, so you can just put your games on Steam, on Android, on iOS, on itch.io. It's all ready for you to go, and you can make money, you can add microtransactions, you can put ads. It's up to you. You can do whatever you want, and you don't have to pay those developers anything if you don't want to. So it seems like a very good entry point. It's free. Apparently it's better than Game Maker, because Game Maker, it's not free, but also you have to learn a programming language. And the bad thing about Game Maker is the programming language is exclusive to Game Maker, so you can't really bring it into Unity or Unreal. If you want to port your games, I guess you'd have to start from scratch. I don't know. So I think I'll just start with that GDevelop. We'll see how things go. And then I'll just keep my Dream stuff going as well. I'll make games. I'll also make, ideas that I might want to put into GDevelop in the future. Let's see here. Skincost says, Dreams is definitely great for things like level design and prototyping. Yeah, like even for professional developers, I would really encourage people to just get Dreams just to throw things around, and you'll have a level, and maybe even a playable level pretty damn quickly. And you can see if your game is shaping up to be pretty good. You can keep testing it, keep working on it, and then you can actually make like the proper final version in your game engine of choice, basically. Skin Cost also says, I'm going with Unreal Engine because it has a similar logic system as Dreams, and Nanite means you don't have to create various LOD versions of the same object, which will save a lot of time. That's quite good. Yeah, I know that you don't technically need to program in Unreal or Unity. They do have like a visual scripting tool that you can use, so it's not impossible. But yeah, just thinking about all the other things you need to do with the game engine just to get things up and running. It just looks very tedious. Something I'll need to do in the future, but I'm hoping like by the time I jump into these game engines, hopefully they've updated enough that things are a bit more accessible. Plus, we don't really know how the game industry is going to go in the next few years, because it seems like they're laying off a lot of employees. They're struggling to make enough money because games are so expensive to make now. So I don't even know what the future of game development is going to look like in the next 5 years or so. But hopefully things like this, like user generated content, making tools like Dreams easier for professionals to use in their own software, and we could really get some really good games. There's a lot of creative people that give up because they just can't make the games. But if they have like tools like Dreams, I'm sure we would get to see a lot more games getting made. Skincos also says you can get AI to program for you too. Yeah, I've never actually tried that. I don't know how sophisticated it would be, because I think it would be pretty difficult to organise all the code and everything. Small Man says learning game engines really annoys me because I can design all the textures, create a good art style, good soundtrack, etc. But then it comes to programming and scripting, I absolutely suck. Yeah, it's never easy. Skincos says Unreal Engine also has free Quixel, is it called? Which is a library of loads of free AAA quality assets. Yeah, that would be pretty good. Like, I don't mind using like other people's assets as long as it's like background details. You know, like if it's like grass or like that little crate there. You know, it's like it's not important to the gameplay, so I could just. It doesn't matter if you've seen it in other games before. It's not really important. But anything that you really do need to pay attention to, I feel like I would like to make all of my own from scratch. Seamcross also says, I'm hoping to have my PC parts by this time next year. I have almost everything bar from the most expensive parts, the CPU, the GPU, the motherboard and power supply. So basically you bought the keyboard and you bought the mouse. Now you're just waiting for the actual powerful stuff coming through. Yeah. Yeah, I've got nothing. Like, say I was going to get a game dev PC and also a streaming PC a few years ago, but then because of COVID, and there's like a shortage of supplies. It was everything was so expensive, and the biggest part is that this technology always advances. Like, people were talking about a certain graphics card, like, oh my god, this is incredible. But then, like, obviously, like a year later, it's redundant. There's like a brand new graphics card that's even more powerful. So it's like, it doesn't seem viable to rush into getting like a proper big PC for all that money, you know, when you could get it when it's redundant and it's much cheaper. Hey Craig Vulture, long time no see. Yep. I've kind of came back over the past few weeks or so. So I came back and I started to do some game dev streams. But last week and this week I'm just trying out something new. I'm just trying out like a more of a chat kind of stream. Oh my god, that is blood everywhere. So I've been trying out some chat streams just to get back into the swing of things again, focusing on different topics. And then I still plan to do more game dev streams, but I want to get more videos out. But it's like, because Dreams is kind of in an awkward situation right now, I think it would be quite naive of me if I just did Dreams content. So I'm trying to move like not too far away. It's instead of just Dreams content, I also want to focus and make more like game dev content. So it's not really about Dreams itself. It's just about making really good horror games, really good RPG games. But obviously I'll continue to support Dreams until the lights go out, like in this game, pretty much. So the survival horror game, I'm still making it. I'm going to show off some of that soon. But I'm just kind of having fun with Dreams now. I'm making some like other horror games and some RPG games and stuff, and just kind of having fun with the whole thing now. Because my ambitions for Dreams, it's like it never matched up with what Media Molecule or Sony or PlayStation provided, you know. And now that it's, we always had hope, like, oh, one day they'll add this, they'll add that. But in the end, it was like, it's never going to happen now. So now that we know, we have to try and plan for the future. So I'm definitely going to try and get into proper game dev at some point. Other game engines. But I'll keep going with Dreams. I'm also trying to figure out what I'm doing with this channel. Like, how can I do Dreams but do game dev, and then also do stuff that is more general gaming, and just try and figure out a way to make the channel grow a bit bigger. Because we grew a lot with Dreams, but I feel like without Dreams it's quite difficult to push forward. So I'm trying to think of like content that I can make, games that I can make that might attract more attention to the channel, and it's not necessarily just because it's Dreams, you know. Crooked Vulture says, yeah, totally. I still feel like they pulled the plug on it way too soon. Yeah, blame Sony for that, to be honest. Skincast says, did you see those links I sent you a few months back showing things like animation, texturing, etc. for PC game dev? I think so. I don't know if you sent it to me on the PlayStation, maybe. I think it was a while back. I can't remember too much though. I'll need to refresh my memory. It looks so easy and quick to make. I was hoping for 10 years. Dreams lifestyle. Yeah. We might still get 10 years, but it's probably going to be more like our own 10 years. You know, it's not going to be Sony, PlayStation, 10 years. So yeah, like, I'm going to keep making my games. I'm going to finish the survival horror game, but all the other games I'm going to make are basically just going to be released like chapters or in little sections, and then I'll update them gradually over time. I'm not going to pour my whole life and existence into Dreams anymore, unless the channel does a bit better, you know. And it's not like people are coming to the channel not because of Dreams, but they're coming because they like to see cool games getting made. They like to see other kind of gaming content and stuff. So we'll see how it goes. Correct Vulture says, me too, Scheme. I still feel like I was just a beginner and they killed it. Yeah, that's how I feel, because I felt like all of the prototypes I was making for my games were just like learning curves for me. So learn how to sculpt and texture and level design and create characters and do logic, and finally when I got to a point where I feel more comfortable, they've just kind of killed the game, just kind of ended it, and it's like, oh god. But the bright side is, okay, we don't have PS5 version, we don't have multiplayer, but we still have a robust creation system. We can still make stuff technically. But if you're going to make something big, make it now, because if it's going to take you like a couple of years to make something, you know, the servers might be getting close to getting shut down. So it's probably wise to get your games out like next year if possible. Schemecast says, I left the links under one of your vids. Going to check the texturing one again myself. Alright, if it's in one of my videos, then it's probably lost. I'll need to look down my notifications and see if I can find it, but I don't think I will. It would be pretty difficult. But if you can send it to me on PlayStation or something, that way I'll always have a record of it. Swickful says they should have just pieced out with a native PS5 update. Real shame, they basically just abandoned it. Yeah, they're basically onto their new game now, so It's going to be a multiplayer live service game, and it's probably going to be their last game if they don't make it a success, which is quite worrying. Excuse me. Scheme says, I spent 5,000 hours and now I don't feel like making anything. Wow. I think my hours are probably more like 3,000 hours, so it's a lot. Obviously not as much as you, but spent a lot of time with this game, even just playing things. Crude Vulture says, I don't feel like they gave it a fair chance, but it is what it is. Yeah, we just have to live with it now. If we're serious enough, we can go on and do other game dev stuff and other engines. If we want to just keep it casual, then we can just keep using Dreams until it finally goes. Who knows how it's going to go. But for me, the most important thing is just like the people that have been around these streams, or people that I've met through Dreams. The fact that I can still talk to you guys and we can still make things and play each other's things, and for me that's like the most important thing now. Not so much that Dreams isn't going to get, 100,000 players playing your game, but you can still reach people that matter most, I guess. And if you do want to take game dev seriously, you can just take all that and put it into your plans for proper game dev. Schemecast says, same, Sony effed up too much not promoting it properly. Oh yeah. Crook Vulture says, hey LBA, can I ask you something? As a big Dreams user, have the save limits on the new servers begun to hinder you yet? Oh my god, just as you said that, something bloody came out and killed me. That was basically Sony, like, don't talk about the server issues or I'll beat you. So yeah, let me get back to your question there. So have the save limits on the new servers begun to hinder you yet? For me, it's worrying because for Subject, I used a brand new scene for every single room and corridor. I basically can't do that anymore. So what I'm doing now with Subject is I'm basically trying to fit as many rooms and corridors and stairwells as I possibly can into one single scene. And I can do that mostly because I'm making my own assets now, so everything's quite cheap to use. So I can condense, like, let's say like 7 or 8 scenes into one scene, and then I'm going to delete all those older scenes. So like Subject's probably got close to like 80 scenes or so. So I'm going to delete all those scenes. I'm going to condense everything down to like maybe like 30 scenes, and then that will save me some space. And then all my future games I'm going to put out, I'm going to do the same thing. So I'm just going to have to condense everything. And if most games take like 25 to 30 scenes total, then I should be able to get quite a few games out if I do finish them all. So I don't think the save limits are going to affect me that much. Plus I never used to make assets as individual elements. I just make everything inside the scene itself. So I don't think I'm going to lose much sleep over the server issues. I don't think it'll be that big of a deal for me. And you can always like make a new account if you want to make more Dreams. And since like there's not a ton of Dreams players, I don't think it would matter that if you started a new account, you won't have your followers, but I don't think it'll be that bad. I think you'll still be able to make what you want just on a different account. Hey Spectron, sorry, went AFK for a little while. What did I miss? Oh, we were talking about different game engines, what we would do if we left Dreams. We talked about other horror games that are coming out soon. And yeah, now we're just hating on the fact that Dreams is shutting down, basically. Schemecast says, I'm going to release my stuff, but most of it is incomplete work in progress stuff, which I usually hate releasing unpolished stuff, but I feel it would be a complete waste to not release anything. Yeah, you may as well, like, if you don't care about your your online storage. You can just put everything up and other people can use it, I'm sure. I'm sure it won't be a problem. Be good to see what you've been working on as well. You were talking about your Last of Us game. It'd be good to see what kind of progress you made there. Crooked Vulture says, the day I heard about those limits, I stopped using it. I have the feeling of only having limited scope. It wasn't what it was advertised as. Yeah. I think if you're someone that liked to make lots of assets and like just constantly create stuff and not really care too much, then it's not so bad. For people like me that I didn't do any of that stuff. That's the main reason why I don't really bother too much about it. Like I was worried at first, but then once I got down to it, it's not actually too bad. And I think the fact that I can condense everything, and I don't even know if I'm going to reach those limits before I move on from Dreams, or if the servers end. Like I don't actually know what's going to happen there. But yeah, it's not as big as a problem as I thought it was going to be, but still obviously annoying. You don't get as much freedom. Scheme Cost says, so are you going with Unreal Engine 5 or GDev LBA? For now, I've got no choice but to go with GDev. Mostly because it's a lighter engine to use, and you can also edit your game online and on the browser, and you can also download an app if you want to use on your phone. So you don't actually need a good PC to make games on it. You can just use the app or use the browser. You can even play the games from the browser as well. Like, you don't have to make them for PC or dedicated mobile games at all. So I'm going to stick with that for now. I can't get basically Unity or Unreal Engine until I get that better PC, and I don't know when that's going to be. So yeah, I think I'm going to explore this GDevelop, see what it's all about. But I'm going to obviously stick to Dreams and just have fun creating with that for now, and just focus on like streaming and doing some YouTube stuff. Spectron says, oh yeah, I was really hoping for multiplayer to release someday. Yeah, never going to happen now, unfortunately. Crooked Vulture says, good to see you again, Scheme and Squipful too. Yeah, it's nice to see everyone again. It's good to see that you're still around, even if you're not on Dreams anymore. Good to see you too, mate. Good to hear. Maybe I'll come back and try again. You may as well. I mean, for me, Dreams is like this. It's just like any other game that you can play. If you feel like creating or playing stuff, go ahead. We don't need to make anything ambitious. We don't need to think about the future. We just play it like any other game. Like if you're going on FIFA or Call of Duty or whatever, you just want to go on Dreams for a little bit, then that's all good. I just want to get Subject finished. All the other games, it's like I've got grand plans to, complete, but no guarantees. Scheme Cost says, I might have to check it out just until I get my PC. Yeah, you may as well. It's probably the best option you've got. If you don't have a PC and you want something that's not like Dreams, but it's more easy because you don't have to program. You can use other assets, or you can import your own ones if you want to. But it's probably the closest you're going to get to a game engine that feels good, but also is good for newcomers as well. And yeah, so the last thing I was just going to briefly touch on, I'm going to make a video on it for possibly tomorrow, but it's a new horror project, and I've always said that Dreams is so powerful, and if you had the experience and the skills, it should be doable to make a decent sized full game in a year. Like if you're really focused, really dedicated and committed, you can definitely make it happen. So obviously me making my survival horror game, I've had to learn a lot. Like learn how Dreams works, improve my skills like my sculpting, texturing, level design, just everything really, just like getting better at being a game developer. And so I feel like I've taken all of that experience, I've improved my skills a lot. I feel more comfortable now, like I did in Little Big Planet. I feel more comfortable that if you say, okay, go and make a game, I can do it. I don't need to worry about tutorials or improving anything. I can just go and do it. So I wanted to challenge myself, and I wanted to make a game that I could realistically finish in 1 year and basically use all of that experience and knowledge and the skills that I've grew over time, and basically prove that it can be done. But obviously it can't be done with any kind of game. Like if I make an RPG game, it's probably not going to be that long of a game or as good. So I was trying to think like what could I do? So I think a horror game would be good. A first person horror game, so imagine something like this game, right? It's also a game that is going to reuse a lot of assets, so it's going to take place in places like a school, a hospital, a hotel, where you can just duplicate the rooms, the corridors, the all the items you can reuse over and over again, just change it up a little bit. So that means I can actually make big sections of the game reusing a lot of the same assets. Something like Subject, it does have a hospital, but it also has like tons of other areas and locations, and it's like I'm having to make so many different rooms, and every room is different, every corridor is different, and it takes a lot of work. So I think if I'm more efficient, I can make a good modern first person horror game. And since I'm already making a game that's quite like Resident Evil, this game is going to be more like Silent Hill. It's going to be more gloomy, more psychological. It's going to have a darker story. So I've already kind of fleshed out the story. I've already fleshed out all the levels, all the locations, the main character, the weapons. It's just some of the creatures I need to think about. But a lot of the planning's already been done because this was a game I was going to make after Subject was finished. But I'm going to try and challenge myself. So tomorrow is Halloween, so I'll try and announce it then officially with a video. I'll talk more about it. And I'm going to give myself 1 year basically until Halloween the following year to try and finish it. And even if I don't finish it, I'll still release it on Halloween. Whatever I get done is what I get done. And I'll try and update at least once a month at the end of the month to sort of say like, okay, this is 1 month, 2 month, 3 month, right, we're getting close to the end. This is the progress. This is what I'm doing. And hopefully I can prove that it can be done. And I'm obviously going to be doing more create streams. I'm going to try and get more of Subject finished because I do want to get Subject finished next year as well. So hopefully I can get Subject out next year, and this first person modern survival horror game out for next Halloween. That's like what I pledged to do. And this is what kind of keeps Dreams more interesting for me as well. Like I kind of need a challenge. I need to finish Subject. I feel like I owe it to everyone and myself to get it done. And if I do a challenge like this, it'll keep me on my toes. It'll keep pushing me because I want to make games, and I feel frustrated because I can't make them in Unreal Engine. It's just not possible right now. But it doesn't mean I need to wait like 5 years before I start making it. So I'm just going to do it now. And any other smaller projects in the meantime, or the RPG games that I'm planning, like they'll just be like little side things that I'll just, if I feel one day, if I just feel like working on a location or a weapon or writing out a quest, then I'll do it. But I don't think any of the RPG games are expected to be complete for like, I don't know, another couple of years if Dreams is still available. So they're just like fun projects. I want to make some RPG games, but just for fun. It's not like, oh, I'm going to make this big game. I'm just going to have fun. Even if I only make like one chapter for each of those games, then that's good enough for me. It's just a proof of concept, maybe. But for the horror game, because Subject has like been my life for a few years now, I need to get it done. Whether it turns out as good or as bad as people were thinking it was going to be, who cares? I'm just going to get it out. It'll definitely be one of the better games in Dreams, but I don't know if it's going to be, so perfect. Might be a bit glitchy. But the but that needs to get done, and this challenge needs to get done. I feel like I need something like that in my life right now because I'm kind of bored, kind of fed up. So I'll keep doing that, and plus I'll look at the G develop stuff and see what I can do with that, and maybe I can even start planning a game that I can obviously release outside of Dreams, put it on Steam or on the iOS or whatever. So that's the plans going forward for now. But I'll try and make a video for maybe tomorrow and for Halloween. Just get that out for anyone that's not part of the stream. Let everyone know about it. Scheme Cost says nice and promising. Swickful says looking forward to it. Scheme Cost says would you port Subject to PC at some point in the future? I had two ideas about what I would maybe do with Subject if I did go on to like professional game dev. One would be, okay, I don't have a good PC right now, but I could probably make like a slightly better looking PS1 game. So like I could make like pre-rendered backgrounds like the original Resident Evil games. So I could even make the backgrounds in Dreams and make them look really good. And then it's just the character and the monsters that are the objects in the game. So I could probably make that in like Unity or Unreal or something in a really basic form, but it would be marketed as like this classic pre-render background kind of game. So it's going to be more niche. It's like a classic survival horror game. So I definitely think performance-wise, I could probably get away with making something like that. But the more ambitious side of me wants to make like a proper, like Unreal Engine, over-the-shoulder, Resident Evil 2 remake style version of the game. But I think either way, the game that I make in Dreams, if I ever port it or remake it in another engine, it's probably going to be quite different. I'm probably going to remix it all, change the story, change everything anyway, just to make it so I can sort of learn from what I've made and make it better, because I still need to sell the game, I still need to make money on it, so it would have to be maybe have a bit more to it, I think. Swickful says, how much of Subject would you see as done? Like 70, maybe 80%? It's difficult to figure out because it's like all the level design's done, all the dialogue is done, most of the voice acting's done. It's really just me going back over everything and making the graphics look good. Same with the characters, I need to sculpt all the new characters and zombies and monsters. And then once I get all that working together, it's really just making the game look nice, because I've already got everything, like transitioning through doors, I've got the inventory, got some of the weapons, so a lot of it is already done. It's just like cracking a few nuts, and then I think everything will will start to come together. And I was also thinking about releasing like an early access version, so you guys can like play and excuse me, test out the streets and test out the hospital areas just to see if the camera angles are good, if the graphics are good, if the combat's good. And I'll probably release like a few early access versions, and then before the main game comes out, I'll probably delete the early access version, and then it'll be like the full game with like the proper encounters and the story and all these kind of things. So Percent wise, it's hard to say exactly what's done, you know, because it's not all playable. But um, I think before I end the stream, what I can do is I can just show you like just a tiny bit. Like it's still all work in progress, right? So like I was trying to work on like the nurses station. So there's still a lot of work to be done, like with texturing and stuff like that. But I'll show you what I mean by condensing the scenes. So let me just take the lighting off, right? So you've got all these rooms, right? So this is like the stairwell on either side. So I'm going to make a stairwell in here or on the side, right? And then obviously this corridor would have been one scene. That once you go through this door, this would have been another scene. I'm busy making a plant here, plant pot, on my wee computer screen. So I'm learning how to like try to sculpt everything myself. Like this scene doesn't have that many objects in it. The street scene has a lot more things going on. But obviously you'll have like this was going to be an extra scene to go off to the other wings of the hospital. You could go inside the patient rooms, which I'm going to make one of and duplicate and then mirror it. This was a bigger one at the very end of the hallway. Also you got like storage closets, little bathrooms and things like that. So I'm going to make everything, not you can't go in every room, but every sort of section is going to have like, is going to be connected to this one single scene. And then I'm going to get like add some more, obviously some more details, because I've got a lot of things I need to put here, like folders and keyboards and people's bags and like food trays and hospital beds, and I'm gonna mess everything all up and proper texture everything. So this was basically just me condensing everything for the hospital, and I've already done the streets and I'm doing the job centre bit as well. Then I've obviously got to do the mechanics and the restaurant and the grocery store. But see if I like stick to Dreams, like I could easily make a full scene, like plot it out in one night, and then the next night I can like start making objects, and then the next night I can start like texturing, and then the next night, you know, do the lighting, and then the next night just like mess everything up and put the cameras in, and you know, it's like easily in like a week or so I could probably make a big section all kind of polished up. It's just that I don't go on Dreams like every day anymore, so it's something I need to get back into the rhythm of doing, and I hope that by getting back into streaming and making videos, and I can try and get back into Dreams properly again. I don't really see myself playing any other PlayStation games until Final Fantasy Rebirth next year and at the end of February. So I'm hopeful that I can get back into the swing of things. And the biggest challenge for me is making graphically good characters and monsters. That's my biggest hurdle. If I can get over that, if I can make facial animation and make clothing and everything for characters, then I can basically do everything in Dreams except from maybe music. So everything's coming together. Just need a bit of an explosion to make sure everything's actually going to come out, and I'm not going to procrastinate too much. But I'm definitely going to put out those early access versions. So like once I finish like this section, I'll let you run about and go through the different wings and the different rooms and the bathrooms and the staircase, and like it's not like going to have zombies and stuff, but you can at least walk around and just test everything, and maybe it's a bit more exciting to get involved more by playing more, not just watching, but actually getting your hands on something. Like every month or every 2 months, get to play something significant just to test and experience. Doesn't have to be like the actual final game or demo, you know. So I think I'll leave today's stream like this. So thanks everyone for tuning in to the second episode of LBA Talks. I tried to improve this week's episode by putting gameplay on the screen and, you know, showing off a little bit of create mode instead of it just being a static screen. So hopefully it was a bit more entertaining, and I'll try and think of ways to improve for the next episode 3, with more topics, maybe do a bit more create stuff as well, just try and make it a little bit different every week. So thanks everyone for spending some time in the stream. It was nice to see you all again, to hear from you all. Spectron, thanks for the stream. Yep, thanks again for tuning in. It was good to see you again. Schemecast says it was great, LB. Looking forward to the next. Crooked Vulture says next time. Yep. So the plan for me is every Monday I'll do one of these episodes. We'll talk about dreams. We'll talk about gaming stuff. We'll talk about projects. Whatever you want to talk about, we'll talk about it. And then at some point I would like to get more dedicated create streams back again. I'm just trying to slowly take my time to get back into them. And then on my end of things, I want to try and make more videos to try and grow the channel a bit more, and trying to get more hype around the games that we're making, and hopefully we can actually get the channel moving a bit more, you know. But let's see what happens, because all this making all these big games, you know, it's great, but we like to see some progress, you know. So see you later everyone. So Swickful, see you man, take care everyone. Monday, making Mondays a little more bearable. Yeah, that's it. Oh no, it's Monday. Oh wait, it's an LBA stream. Excellent, perfect. Yeah, we'll see how it goes. Then maybe I can do a stream on Thursday or Friday one day, just to tail end the week. We'll see how it goes. But thanks everyone for joining for another experimental live stream. We'll see what we can do for next Monday's stream. So take care everyone, have a great week, and I'll see you all very shortly. Bye.